Few people knew all the sides of Buddy Rich. The public Buddy Rich was the tart-tongued, acerbic wit on view on the Johnny Carson show. The private Buddy Rich was a man of great sentiment, loyalty, temperament, humanism, outspoken passion, a loving son, husband, and father, and believe it or not, a doting grandfather. In his 8 decades as a performer, he was a capable and affecting singer, band leader, superb dancer, but for most of us, Buddy Rich will forever be known as the world's greatest drummer. General public, fellow musicians of every age and style, and even the so-called critics had to agree with that assessment. Gene Krupa summed up his artistry by saying, "He was the greatest drummer that ever drew breath," unquote. I knew Buddy Rich and most of his complex sides for almost 43 years, and I'll state for the record that there will never, ever be another one like him. His extraordinary talent was evident at an extraordinarily early age. Born to vaudevillians Robert and Bess Rich on September 30th, 1917, Bernard Buddy Rich began his professional career 10 months later by playing a wild snare drum solo as the finale of his parents' act. Buddy's sister Jo recalled that auspicious beginning.
Dad and Mother were at a theater 8:30 in the morning rehearsing their act, and they sat Buddy down above the pit where the drummer was playing. And the drummer noticed that Buddy was what he thought keeping time. And they all laughed, and the leader thought it was an accident and stopped the band and said, "Let's play a different time." So they played a waltz, and Buddy played a waltz.
My parents were in show business, and they did a musical act. And when I was a very, very little guy, I picked up a knife and fork and started playing on tables. But it wasn't as a kid would play on tables. I was actually playing rhythmical things, so that they put me in the finale of their act playing drums. I was called at those days Traps the Drum Wonder.
Buddy filmed a movie short for Vitaphone in 1929 at the age of 12. And though the video portion has presumably been lost, the audio has survived and still sounds remarkable today. By the end of the decade, Jackie Coogan and Buddy Rich were the highest paid child stars in the country. But vaudeville was dying, and Buddy was growing older and more restless, especially since he started listening to jazz.
My first introduction to jazz was sitting home in Brooklyn at night and secretly turning the radio on at 11 o'clock and listening to Glenn Gray and the Casa Loma Band from the Essex House with Sonny Dunham and Pee Wee Hunt and Tony Briglia and people that were just outrageously great, and decided that that's something that I had to get into until I heard the Benny Goodman Band. And I said, wow. And then I heard Basie's band. I said, oh my God. And that was it. Jazz was born.
Originally, I played Dixieland drums. The first band I ever played in was Joe Marcella's band at the Hickory House, a great Chicago-style Dixieland clarinet player.
And when Marcella offered him the job, He just finished his date at the Folly Theater in Brooklyn and decided he was going to throw away his dancing shoes, and that's the way it was. Daddy was very disturbed because he didn't think he was going to get anywhere being a drummer. I mean, what could you do with that?
It was about 50-odd years ago that I first met Buddy. I'd been working in a club called the Crystal Cafe in Brooklyn with two great guys. And one of my students brought Buddy down and said that Buddy says he plays better than Gene Krupa. Well, after hearing that, I wanted to hear the guy play. And after he played, I went over and I said, where did you learn to play that way? I couldn't, I never studied, never took any lessons. Well, he played so great that that evening I got on the phone and got a hold of a very dear friend of mine, Artie Shapiro, who's a great bass player, working with Joe Marcella at the Hickory House. Right down the fourth tree, I took Buddy down, and the place was jammed. I went over to Joe, and I said, Joe, did Artie tell you about the drummer? So very reluctantly, he let him play. In the meantime, he asked me if Buddy could play a fast tempo. I said, he can play faster than you can. He play a solo better than you can. So they played his famous tune, Jim Jam Stump, very fast, boop, boop, boop. And Buddy started, he was in heaven. But then, toward the end of the solo, at the end of the tune, he let Buddy take a chorus. Well, to make the story very short, the whole place became uproariously loud. They never heard anything like that in their life.
After Marcella, Buddy joined the big band of trumpet great Bunny Berrigan. Bunny was a marvelous player, although not a born leader, and the group was deteriorating. But the word was out about Buddy Rich's talent, and in the beginning of 1939, he entered the big leagues when he joined Artie Shaw's band. He gave that band a drive and a sense of swing that it had never before experienced. Buddy's longtime friend and associate, Stanley Kay, was there at the start.
At the Lincoln Hotel, Artie Shaw's band was playing at the Lincoln, and as kids do and musicians who wanted to play in bands, I read that Artie Shaw's drummer left named Cliff Lehman. And I've never thought they knew who to get or who to call, and I was very naive. And I waited for Artie Shaw in the alley at the Lincoln where you would come out, there was an alleyway, and I went up to him and I said, oh, Mr. Shaw, and he was very nice, and I said, I read that you were looking for a drummer. And he said, how do you know that? Well, I said, I read it in the trade magazines. And he said, yes, I am. I said, well, I know the greatest of them all. I said, Buddy Rich. And I guess he was kidding me, and he said, he can't play. And next week he joined his band. And in my little way, I thought that I had gotten him the job.
I think the musicians in the band were in awe of Artie Shaw. He was a superior musician, a great clarinet player, and a very difficult guy to work for. We opened at the Pennsylvania Hotel. Room was jam-packed. We had just come in after being a smash success across the country. We had just done the movie, Dancing Co-Ed. We came into the hotel, opened that night, played the first set. There was an intermission, and when we came back, there was no leader. He had split, and everybody said, well, he's gone. Where did he go to? We found out later that he was on his way to Mexico City. So Tony Pastor fronted the band that night, and the following 2 weeks, everybody had given in their notice, and the band broke up. It was the hottest band in the country. It was the #1 band in the country at the time, absolutely. No challenge.
It's one of the best jazz bands at the time for what jazz was supposed to be, trying to combine dance band music and a jazz band concept. And it was the best. It was a hot band. Great, you know, people like Tony Pastor and Georgie Hall and Bob Kissis on piano. Really a great band. I was very happy in the band. I wish I'd played better when I hear the way I sounded on the band. Now, the concept is different today, but when I look at the movie or when I watch any of the television things that the band had done at the time, I'm not satisfied with what I played or how I played. And it's a great thing because you can realize that when you listen to those things and you listen to the things at your later career and then to the present time, it's kind of a flattering thing for myself to feel that I'm improving all the time. I wouldn't have been happy if I just thought that was really swell and was good enough. It wasn't good enough. It wasn't good enough then, and it certainly isn't good enough now.